Derek Andersen. Welcome to Startup Grind's first global live stream. So apparently we're on. Oh, we're not on.
Google doesn't have enough bandwidth.
5, 4, 3.
That I know is not true.
1, go.
This feels like iCarly.
And I am Carly.
And I'm Sam.
Well, welcome from wherever in the world you happen to be right at this moment to Startup Grind's first global live stream. We're live on Meerkat. We're live on Google Hangout. My name is Derek Andersen. I'm the founder and CEO of Startup Grind. Startup Grind is an organization that educates and connects and inspires, or we try to inspire entrepreneurs in more than 70 countries and 150 cities around the world. We do that through hosting local events and through educational content like you're going to have today. Let me just thank a couple of people before we start. First of all, I want to thank Google where we are today. We're at Google HQ in Mountain View, California. In the Google for Entrepreneurs layer is a deep inside of the Google campus. A big thank you to them. We are global partners with Google for Entrepreneurs and appreciate all that they do to support us and to support our communities. If we don't have a chapter in your city, we'd love to start one. So please go to startupgrind.com. You can apply to start a chapter. If we do have a chapter in your city, please go and join the community. We actually have today, we have dozens of cities that have put together events to get together for this live stream. So they'll participate in this. And we've had over 1,000 questions come from around the world. Just, incredible stuff. And I'm hoping it's going to be the basis for Guy's next book of just, answering entrepreneurial questions. Some of them we will definitely not be reading for those of you that are trying to slip through the cracks. But just a shout out to people across the world in London, in Nairobi, in Curitiba, in Albany, in Sacramento, in Tampa, Toronto, Waterloo, and many other places that I haven't mentioned. So without further ado, let me introduce Guy Kawasaki, who is the chief evangelist for Canva. He has had a prolific career, which includes degrees from Stanford, from UCLA. He was the chief evangelist at Apple for a long time. He's been a founder many times over. He's been an investor many times over, and he is an author, and he has written more than a dozen books. Many of you have read them. As I was preparing for this talk, and as we started to talk about it, I've interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs like Guy, and I can't think of a time where I've ever had more people tell me that our speaker has had an impact, such a huge impact in their entrepreneurial journey and in their career. Yeah, it's true. But he is the author of Ape. He's the author of the
Macintosh Way.
Thank you, the Macintosh Way. He's the author of Enchantment and The Art of the Start 2.0, which is a book I've spent a lot of time with over the last month, and I wish I had found it 5 years ago. There was another version that was out about 10 years ago, and this is completely revamped with what I think in the last 10 years the startups have really everything about startups have totally changed. So
been huge changes. Yes.
Welcome to Startup Grind for the first time, and would love to start by asking you. It's good, you're a great interviewer, so you can critique me afterwards, but it's always great to start with a very tough question and then come back. So the tough question that I have for you is that our research team kind of dove into your books and your writings over the last 25 years, and what we found was that all of your writings combined as a body of work is more kind of knowledge than the Torah, the New Testament, and the Quran combined. And so I wanted to know, to start, if when you were a child, did your parents send you to the North Shore to a monastery, or
no.
And now you're getting these things out, or where does all this come from?
No, I hate to tell you that I had a very happy sort of lower middle income upbringing. I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, in a relatively poor part of that wonderful place, and I had no trauma, no abuse, there's nothing. I didn't have a paper route at 8. I just had a wonderful life. And so no, I don't have that great story. I'm not This is not Oprah, right?
You can
So,
cry. If
yeah,
you need
right.
to cry.
Yeah, here's a Pontiac for everybody. So what's compelled me is that I have now written 13 books, and I have a personal mantra for my life, which is to empower people. And I empower people with my writing, my speaking, my advising, and sometimes my investing, and in Canva's particular case, with my full-time work. And I wanted to empower people, and one of the best ways is to write. And I started writing in 1987 with the Macintosh Way. And I had this great high school influence, a high school English teacher who has passed on now, but he just must be laughing, rolling over, LOLing, LMAO also, that of all his students, I'm the one who wrote 13 books.
Were you not the most prolific writer in high school, or did
No.
he did?
No, I mean, this was AP English, okay?
Yeah.
So I wasn't, but I don't think I was his outstanding student.
Yeah.
But I love to write. The only thing worse than writing is not writing. And I just feel a compulsion to try to communicate what I learned. I just co-wrote a book called The Art of Social Media with Peg Fitzpatrick. This is one that we both felt compelled to explain social media as we know it to as many people as possible. Some of it is just sheer laziness. There, for The Art of the Start and The Art of Social Media, at some point you just get so tired of answering the same questions.
Sure.
It's just so much easier to say, just freaking buy the book and don't bother.
It's all
me.
in there.
Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it. Well, let's start with kind of the beginning here. And the original Art of the Start was written in 2004. It really seems like everything has changed almost in the startup world since then, and some of the fundamentals are maybe the same. But what in your mind over the last 11 years has changed in the startup world?
Lots, and this is what compelled me to write the book. Basically, there's now crowdfunding, which didn't exist 11 years ago. So crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, no equity dilution, pre-sales, no sucking up the venture capitalists, no going through 9 months, no term sheets, nothing. Shoot a 2-minute video, put it up there and pray, right? So that's democratization of venture capital, if you will. Before, you had to buy rooms full of servers, and you had to have several locations in case Cupertino has an earthquake. You don't want your site to go down, so you have to put one in whatever, right? And so you put like 5 things, and so now you have 5 sites with 5 sets of servers, 5 sets of IT staff, 5 sets of everything. You don't need that. Now there's someplace in Seattle or in San Antonio, you're either on S3 or you're on Rackspace, and if you need more bandwidth, like sometimes it's automatically allocated. So you're not buying anything. There was no social media back then, believe it or not. I mean, and so back then you thought, well, I have to please get on the show, the conference, and have my
to launch your product,
have my 6 minutes. And if you really added up everything it cost to go to demo, it's probably 25 grand with travel and all that kind of stuff, right? And back then, way back then, Wall Street Journal ads, I don't know, 100 grand or something. So 100 grand for that. Then you have this press conference,
PR firm,
and all that. But now social media, it's kind of hard to spend money, right? So social media, you have Google Plus and Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and Instagram and now Meerkat, and all of that is basically free. I will say with Facebook, that's probably the only place that's justified to spend money to promote your posts, to target markets. You can have dark posts that only go to certain people. Like with this book, we offered a special deal to people living in the US and Canada that I didn't want to just post. I wanted to post to only people who could take advantage of. And so promoted pins for Pinterest, I think is going to be huge. So anyway, the bottom line is marketing is free or cheap. And then before, you had to buy these tools. You had to buy a license from Oracle or something. And now with with PHP and Python and Java and everything,
open source community,
basically every tool is cheap. So if we go down the list, Oh, and then by the way, you also have to have an office with, you know, cubicles, and you know, you have to go to Price Club and all that kind of stuff. But now your team is virtual. So if you go down the list, man, everything is fast and free, and not free necessarily, but cheap.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to start a company today.
On that thought of social media, I joined Twitter in 2008, and it started the year before that, and you were probably one of the first people that I followed for whatever reason. And so you were there, and you already had this huge following. You already seemed to get it. But a lot of people are asking us through this, to ask you specifically, how do you take your community from social media? How do you monetize it? How do you turn that into sales? How do you turn it from this following into something tangible?
Well, the hard part of that is getting the following.
Sure.
Okay? So first of all, let's not assume you have the following. So the first question is, how do you get the following? And the way you get a following on social media is, you provide value, because it's about what they want to learn about, not what you want to say. And so I proselytize the concept of the NPR model. So for those of you not in America, NPR is National Public Radio, and it provides great content, basically 365 days a year. Wait, don't tell me, This American Life, Tech Nation, Fresh Air.
Sure.
And so every once in a while, because it's a not-for-profit, it has to raise funds. And the way it raises funds is the pledge drive. So the way the pledge drive works is they run their normal programming. At the end, they always say, you know, we're in our pledge drive right now, and if you call right now and donate $10 per month, the people at Google Ventures are going to match you dollar for dollar for the first $5,000. And if you do that, minimum commitment $10 a month, you get a free Eton radio, or you can hand crank it in case, you know, you're about to die. You'll find out how you're about to die. And so, and nobody wants the pledge drive, right? I mean, you don't look forward to, God, I wish the pledge drive were longer.
Is the president on right now?
Right. I just like dying to get interrupted in my programming. So the reason why NPR can get away with it, and indeed people actually contribute, is because they've earned the right. They've earned the right by providing such great content. So that's my framework. I think that people should think like NPR, provide such great content that people will have a feeling of reciprocation, that now, wow, the guy provides such great content, he's come out with a book, I should at least check out the book. So, and the other consequence of great content is you get it, and then you reshare it to people who follow you. So this is what I call the reshare test, which is you should post such great stuff that people who get it want to share it to their followers. And by doing that, they're essentially risking their own reputation.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's one thing to just like something, plus one it or something, but it's another to send it to your followers. That's like telling people to eat at a restaurant versus just tipping the waiter.
Right.
So all of this adds up to more followers. So now when you have more followers, because you're adding value, you have earned the right to promote. And so this is, you know, if you're Canva, you tell people we have an iPad version of Canva that's out. If you're Guy, you tell people that the art of social media is out, or that the art of the start 2.0 has been out. And that's basically the way.
How do you do all those things without annoying your wife, or, you know, keeping your family tight? Because it seems like, you know, if I'm going to always be there, if I'm going to always be on, then I have to, you know, and if I'm always giving, well, and then, you know, I mean,
first of all, there's several levels of this answer. Okay. So number one, at the baseline, it is a lot of work. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you're talking to someone who's like 6 standard deviations beyond normal. Okay. So it is a lot of work, but I will tell you, for most people, it's probably 2 or 3 hours of work a day. And for me, I also have roughly the equivalent of 2 full-time equivalents helping me with social media. And one of those 2 people is Peg Fitzpatrick, who is like beyond Thunderdome in terms of social media. She's the best social media person in the world. I would put her up against entire agencies. And so it helps to have a superstar behind you. But not everybody's going to have Peg Fitzpatrick or a Peg Fitzpatrick. But I'm telling you, it's 2 or 3 hours a day. And it's, in a sense, I'm telling you, if you're an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur, there's only 2 things you really have to do. You have to make it and sell it. Okay. And social media is the selling part of it. So to say social media, how can I do social media when I have so many other things to do? What I hear you say is, how can I do marketing when I have so many other things to do?
Yeah.
It's time to man up. You have to do social media. Now, if you are McDonald's, okay, buy a stadium, run a Super Bowl commercial, do that kind of stuff. Just throw money at the problem.
Yeah.
But I don't think a lot of people in, startup grind are McDonald's, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right. So not that I love McDonald's. They have a, they have
Oh, it's
different,
amazing.
yeah.
The nuggets.
So for people who cannot throw money at marketing, there's social media.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Well, and the thing that you're saying is there's not a shortcut. Do the hard work, put in the effort, even on the social front, even on the marketing side. Like, be thoughtful about it,
Yeah.
and you can make waves.
This ain't rocket science.
Yeah.
I mean,
tell me about, let's get back to starting a startup. If Guy Kawasaki walks in here, he's slightly younger, 1 or 2 years younger, and he's in his mid-20s, and he's
one or two or three or four decades younger, but okay.
And you're starting a startup. Where do you start? What do you do?
I think the most important thing is to build a prototype. Let me tell you what is not the most important thing to do. It is not to create a pitch. It's not to create a financial projection, and it's not to write a business plan. And in fact, this book says don't write a business plan at all.
Right.
So I think people, they need to separate the sort of the routine tasks of writing a business plan and a pitch and all that from the core concept of a startup, which is to make something. And so, if you have a great prototype, if you have a great prototype that the dogs are also eating already, then it makes everything easier, because now your pitch can be, hi, my name is Derek, and let me show you my product. You don't have to worry about slides. So it's all about the product or the service. And the closer you are to finished, the ultimate pitch is, I've been bootstrapping. My buddy and I, we had an idea that we wanted to use something like this. So we created it for ourselves. To our utter amazement, all our friends started using it. And now we need capital to scale, which is different than to say we need capital to build our first version. That is the dream pitch. And it is because so many of the variables have been removed. Basically, the two most important, which is, yes, they really can build it because of shipping. And not only could they build it, people are interested
Customers
because
want
they're
it.
consuming it.
Yeah.
That just takes about all the risks off the table. After that, a risk is maybe, can you scale? But listen, I've been in this game a long time, and I've never seen a company fail because it could not scale. 99.99999% of the companies fail because what they did sucks. It's not because, they were going to be successful if only they had more capital to scale faster.
Yeah, and I think we got a lot of questions around this, around people who are outside of Silicon Valley, looking and saying, how do I get investors' attention? How do I, and the reality is investors like Excel and Sequoia and some of these others, they will, if you have a great company, they're more than happy to get on a plane and come find you, but that company must meet the criteria that you describe.
Well, there's several ways to answer that. One is, yes, that's true. I mean, you can always depend on the greed of venture capitalists. The sun will rise and venture capitalists are greedy, okay? Take those two as a given. Another given is, I will be tweeting that day.
Somebody tweet that, please.
Yeah. But I think what's more important is to think, venture capital should not be the goal.
Yeah.
Okay. The goal is a great product, great service,
Well
a company that creates customers, as Peter Drucker would say. That's the goal. So venture capital and angel capital can be things that help you get to that goal, but they are neither necessary nor sufficient. And they just came out with a study that roughly 5% of the companies that are formed every year have angel or venture capital. And then one could say, well, that's because so many of the companies are restaurants and retailers and consultancies that are not applicable to venture capital. If you just looked at the tech companies, it would be much higher. So they cut the data differently, and it came out like 8% instead of 5%. And so the bottom line is, for venture capital and angel capital, that's let's call it 10%. So that's applicable to 10% of the companies. It's a very, very specialized game. It's a game where people are trying to create things that become the next Google or Apple or Cisco or YouTube or Facebook or Pinterest. And so, first of all, you have to ask yourself, without being totally intoxicated, can you imagine your idea becoming the next Google? And if the answer is no, don't look for venture capital. It's that simple. So, you're, in a sense, you're setting yourself up for failure. So what I tell people is you should look at venture capital as something that is, in a sense, not as negative as this, but it's kind of the last resort. That you've tried Indiegogo, you've tried Kickstarter, you've tried to bootstrap, you've tried to do all that. None of that works, so you're going to raise venture capital. Of course, you can make the case if you tried all of that and you couldn't make it work, why would venture capital fix that? But
right.
That's a very different question. But I don't think that venture capital should be the first thing you think about. It's kind of like, think of venture capital as crack, and venture capitalists are crack dealers. You're going to feel really great for a while, but eventually it'll kill you. Okay, so get off of that.
The hashtag is startup grind for these great nuggets we're getting. We all know what an MVP is, a minimum viable product.
Yes, I love that concept.
Tell us what the M, this is from the book, tell us what the MVVVP is.
So first of all, Eric Ries and Steve Blank, they're so smarter than me, because I wrote this book 11 years ago. And rather than coming up with clever acronym like MVP, I came up with, don't worry, be crappy, which I thought was better. Like don't worry, be crappy, pun on Bobby McFerrin's song, right? Don't worry, be happy. So I came up with don't worry, be crappy, and they came up with MVP, and the rest is history.
We could try to turn the tables.
It's a little late.
Don't worry, be crappy.
So the concept of MVP is you have this minimal viable product that you get out, and you do the prototype, you get out there and you launch and test and all that good stuff, the lean startup, right? I love that concept. But I will say that I think you should add 2 V's to MVP. So minimal, got it. Viable. Viable means that it's foreseeable that you can make a return, that your revenues will exceed your cost. That's viability. But then I would add a second V. The second V would be that it's valuable, that you're changing the world, that you're doing something significant. You're not simply making a buck, because you can simply make a buck and be viable, but not be valuable to society. That's the first V I'd add. The second V I'd add is validating or validation, which is to say that you can have something that makes a buck, you can have something that's important, but it could not validate your vision for the future. So I'll give you a case in point. Let's say that one day Apple decides to start selling Apple labeled printers. Okay, so they go to Brother or Canon, they say, we want to buy millions of printers a year, take your label off, put our label on. I'm sure Johnny Ive will put some curve on the bezel of the printer and say, we thought that
they tried the printers at one point. It didn't go so hot, but
so Johnny Ive will say, well, the printer should match the curve of your hand, and we found this special metal to make the cover of the printer that reflects the pixels better in the light.
I would buy that.
Yeah, I know you would. So anyway, so Apple could ship a printer. Would it be viable? Yes. Apple would buy. People would buy an Apple labeled printer. Is it valuable? Dubious, right? So what could Apple add to printing? Does it validate Apple's vision of productivity, creativity, the enhancement, individual improvement? No. So a printer from Apple would not pass the MVVVP test. It would pass the MVP test. Apple could ship out a minimum viable printer, but it would not be validating and it would not be valuable.
Well, or maybe if Apple, in this analogy, if Apple came up with a printer that was 10x better than any printer that had ever existed, maybe it was doing some sort of Johnny Ive 3D, 4D, 6D print or something.
Yeah.
And maybe that would create that extra value of just more than just a brand and something else, but maybe not. Okay.
But the lesson here is for entrepreneurs, that I think entrepreneurs should not just be thinking, I can ship this piece of crap and make a buck on it.
Yeah.
I want them to ship a piece of crap that changes the world and validates their vision.
We talk about nailing it and scaling it. You talk about this in the book. You've just talked about it a little bit here. But when do I know that I've nailed the product enough to start getting out there and start talking about it, start marketing it, all these
The
things?
hardest question at all. So there's the question of, don't worry, be crappy, which is MVP concept. Or there's like, what happens if I ship a piece of crap in version 1, the image gets tarnished, and like I implode because of that. So when do you squeeze the trigger? That's a very hard question. So one real world answer to that question is you squeeze the trigger when you're about to run out of money, right? Because if you wait for perfection and you run out of money, it won't matter if you squeeze the trigger. So one real world pressure is you're about to run out of money. Ship. Another perhaps better thing is to ask. It's kind of a qualitative test, which is, have you jumped curves? Have you pushed the technology forward enough? It doesn't have to be perfect, right? I'm not saying ship crap, but I'm saying, to use a very old example, there used to be an ice harvesting industry in the United States, and Bubba and Junior would go to a frozen lake or pond, cut a block of ice. 30 or 40 years later, now there's the ice factory curve. Now you freeze water centrally, you have the Iceman deliver ice in the ice truck. 30 years after that, there's the refrigerator. Now you have your own personal ice factory. It's, a PC, a personal chiller. So the question is, if you were an ice harvester and you were creating an ice factory, when is an ice factory good enough to ship? First ice factory probably wasn't perfect.
Sure.
For one thing, trucks could only go 30 miles with it before it melted. I don't know, whatever, right? And then if you had an ice factory, you looked at the first refrigerator, that was way before there was, the thing on the outside that crushed the ice. And, Samsung has probably like some IP address in the refrigerator and tells your water to send this, whatever, right? It's way before that. But let's face it, that the first ice factory was probably already better than the best ice harvester, because the first ice factory could be in any city, any time of year. First refrigerator was better than the best ice factory because the first refrigerator was in your house. You didn't have to have the truck. So I'm telling you, when you jump the curve like that, you can have elements of crappiness to it. Ship. Like if you look at Meerkat right now, there are things that they're having issues with Twitter, right? And like, I swear lots of times when I come on, it's not tweeting it out. I'm not getting an audience. So there's elements of stuff that's happening, but you can already see it's so much fun, right?
Yeah.
And you can already see I'm reaching people. It's like my personal TV station, and it's accessing my social graph. It's good enough. Let it rip.
Yeah, you're willing to overlook the issues that they have because the product is solving such a cool problem.
And so basically there's a trade-off here, and if you're good enough, people will put up with crap.
Yeah.
That's one way of describing Apple, right? I mean, Apple's so great at what it does, you put up with a lot of crap.
Yeah. Let's talk about teams and co-founders. This is one of the most important pieces of being an entrepreneur, is being somebody that can build a great team. And you have this great analogy that sometimes if you're at a dance and no one wants to dance with you, you can be tempted to want to dance with the first person that's interested in dancing with you. I mean, that basically describes high school for me. So if I'm trying to get founders and co-founders and family members and everybody else interested in what I'm doing, how do I, it's so hard, right? It's so hard to get anyone inspired by what I'm doing. How do I avoid the temptation to just take the first people and really wait for the right people? What is that balance?
To continue your analogy, if the biological clock is going off for you and you want to have children, I'm not sure you should lower your standards and marry someone abusive, So that's kind of a good analogy, that this is going to last a long time. It's going to have a lot of effects. Finding a co-founder, I think, is more about explaining what you do and seeing who gets it. In a sense, it's very guttural that someone either gets it or doesn't get it in 5 minutes. Now, if nobody gets it, it's possible that it's you, right? It doesn't always mean that the rest of the world is stupid. It could be you're clueless. So partly it's it's getting out there. It's a law of big numbers. And, you know, at some level, for millennials who don't have like 40 years of working with other people, so they have a large pool, you know, I met someone yesterday who works for a company called Campus Jobs, New York based, out here for Y Combinator right now. And there's like 8 kids basically who, you know, sort of went to school together in New York. And, you know, did they have an extensive, you know, headhunting path and, you know, all that? Like, they got together, they liked each other, they started a company. Hallelujah. I mean,
Yeah.
what's wrong with that? As long as you understand that you need complementary skills. You don't want 8 engineers because nobody's going to sell it. You don't want 8 salespeople because who's going to make it?
Yeah.
So you need people who have different skills. And so there are some things with co-founders you want similar and some things you want different. So similarities are things like time frame. You know, if everybody wants a quick flip, but you're trying to build to last, that's a problem. You want similar visions that, you know, if Steve Jobs thought that the world was going to go to centralized computing and Steve Wozniak thought it was going to personal computing, that would be a kind of a philosophical problem, right? So that would not have been a good match. There's also sort of dedication level. If someone wants to work for a company part-time, side action, in a little consultancy, someone wants to dedicate his or her life to it also. So those are the kinds of things you have to be sure you're on the same page. The things you want to be on different pages are primarily expertise. Like I said, somebody sell it, somebody make it. You would also like different perspectives. You know, if everybody inside a company is a computer science PhD student, 3rd generation American, male, you're going to have problems. And so you need diversity there for the company to last.
I think that some of the best advice I ever got on this was from an entrepreneur that sold a company for tens of millions of dollars. And he said, go out and talk to 75 engineers and you convince the best to work with you. And it took me years to talk, like to sit down and have, you know, lunch or whatever with 75 different people. But to your point of, you know, when I finally found those people, it was almost immediate that, and Y Combinator makes their decision in 10 minutes, right? So, but you kind of have
that
moment.
That's a lie, you know.
That's a lie?
Yeah. They make
How
their
does it really work?
decision in 1 minute.
Okay.
The last 9 minutes, they're being civilized.
Well, and sometimes it doesn't last that long.
Yeah,
right?
well, to use an analogy, venture capital and, you know, getting into incubators and really life, it's more Tinder than eHarmony. You know, left or right. That's it. The world is divided, left or right. It's not 29 fields of psychographic information, left or right.
Well said. Life is like Tinder.
Life is like Tinder. Tinder's life.
What advice do you have for people that want to join startups, that want to become employees, that want to become part of teams? How do you make those decisions? It's totally different than necessarily, you know, starting a startup. But, you know, what advice do you have for those people that are like, hey, I don't know if I have the greatest ideas or I have the right idea right now. I'm looking for something else. How should I look at that?
I think, again, it's the law of big numbers. It's willingness to take a risk. I think that's why so many companies are started with young people, because, well, there's several levels. One is they don't know what they don't know. Because when you get to my age, you have accumulated so much knowledge that you become conservative, right? So, like, I know how hard it was to create a critical mass for another operating system. I will never do that again. But when I was young, I had no idea. Steve said, we're going to do it. Hell, we're going to do it, right?
Yeah. So
part of it is being young, so you don't know what you don't know. That's a good thing. That's empowering. And it knows entrepreneurship takes denial and delusion. It really does. You need to be a little nutso. And so the time to be nuts is when you're young and no mortgage, no car, no kids, really. That's the time. You should go for it. And I could make the case that, you know, the opposite of success is not failure. The opposite of success is learning. So now it's easy for you know, someone to say, but I could make the case that if you're coming right out of college, so many people are worried about the first job. And over the course of your career these days, millennials, I think they're going to have 10 or 15 jobs. And you're going to look back and you probably won't even remember your first job. Doesn't really matter. If your first job is a total implosion, you probably learn more than, let's say, your first job, you went to work for Google. I mean, we have to go back when Google just started. So, you were some Stanford engineering student or something. And
You bumped into Sergey at the job
yeah,
fair.
yeah, right. You bumped into Sergey, and Sergey said, come and be our shipping clerk. You said, I don't know, what the hell? I got nothing to do this summer. So you go to Google, be a shipping clerk, and now you're worth $200 million, right? So, I mean, that's a fantastic outcome for you personally, but what did you learn? I mean, I think it's very difficult for many people to separate correlation and causation. And so there are many people who believe they caused the success of a company, but I also think there are many people who got on a horse and the horse happened to be, the Kentucky Derby winner. They didn't train the horse. They didn't, plan for that. They just got on it. So, well, one conclusion you could reach is it's better to be lucky than smart. I truly do believe that.
Although if you weren't smart, you wouldn't have been at Stanford and Sergey would have never hired you. So
yeah, that's also true to some degree, but I don't think it. Listen, I went to Stanford. I love Stanford, but we're in the same complex as Khan Academy, right? And that's the democratization of education. And if you think that only people who went to Stanford and Harvard and Carnegie Mellon and MIT can be successful, that is a very bad judgment. That is simply not true.
And most of the great entrepreneurs actually
dropped out.
They dropped out, or they came from very difficult circumstances. I mean, you talked about this at the beginning where you said, I had a very happy childhood. I love my parents, all
That's
these
why
things.
I'm not that successful.
But that's the thing is like, the Elon Musks or the Steve Jobs or and there are countless examples of amazing entrepreneurs who came from nothing and the hardest circumstances.
Andrew Grove.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I could, the person who went to Dartmouth because their parents gave a building, well, I think that person is kind of uninvestable. I think I'm third generation Japanese American, right? So I think it's the first generation comes to America to escape, to gain freedom, whatever, right? And they land here, they got on that last helicopter from
wherever they came from
the embassy in Vietnam, right? So they got on that last helicopter, the last C-5A or whatever flew out of there. And next thing you know, they're in Sacramento of all places. Like, they don't even speak English. So they become a dishwasher in a Vietnamese restaurant. And, then they somehow they start running a liquor store and they say.
This is your parents?
No.
No, you're just me. Okay.
My grandparents came over to be maids and taxi drivers. So it's not like, it's not like they came from the emperor's family and, whatever. So now they're running a liquor store and they save everything they can and they send their kids to, at least high school, and maybe the next generation goes to college. That's the generation.
Yeah.
And that's the generation because they still remember what it's like to be poor and what it's like to be hungry. And they don't have a sense of entitlement that, my family has been here since the Mayflower and, like I want to work
hungry.
and I want to work for Goldman Sachs. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people, look at you and today they look at you right at this moment and think, wow, guy's just done it. He picked Apple, man, he got into Stanford, like he's so smart. He's written all these books. He's thoughtful, all this stuff. Just wow, he's got millions of Twitter followers. But tell us about, bring yourself back down to earth for us. Tell us about a failure.
I'm on earth, man. You put me up there.
I just did.
Me.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You are on earth. But tell us about a time when you failed or something that you were part of that, that didn't go the way you planned, because I think everyone in the world can relate to this, especially you.
Yeah.
But tell us about something that you learned a big lesson with.
So, not that I would ever spin it this way, but you could make the case that Macintosh was a failure because Macintosh achieved, 10, 15% market share at the low point, it was at 5%. I don't know what it is today, but let's say it's back to 10 or 15%, right? So there's still 85% that's not Macintosh. And so you could make the case that Windows won and Macintosh lost. So you could say I failed at Macintosh evangelism. I've started several software companies. None of them became an Oracle. None of them became a Salesforce.com. I'm not a billionaire. So, boy, I hate to burst this bubble and like everybody starts signing off Meerkats right now, right? And signing off the HOA. So I don't, I'm not a billionaire. I'm not, I don't own the San Jose Sharks.
Right.
I just happen to write books and I like to communicate. And I mean, I'm not saying people should feel sorry for me. I'm not running a Kickstarter project for my next book to raise money so I can have some free time to write. But I'm not in that rare air club. I still fly. I fly first class, but I still fly commercial.
Well, let's we've got about 10 more minutes. I want to just kind of go through a couple of questions about you that people were interested in.
Yeah.
And the first thing I want to just ask you about is about Canva. What is coming? First of all, why is your associate? Well, yeah. Why did you get involved with Canva, and what's coming from Canva that we should be looking for?
It's kind of a duhism to say, but I love social media. And one of the lessons of social media is that if you want to increase your engagement, roughly double it, you have to put a graphic in it. So every tweet, every post, everything should have a graphic or an embedded video. And so I had a big need for embedded graphics. And so my faithful assistant and social media ninja, Peg Fitzpatrick, discovered Canva. So we started using Canva. And our posts started becoming more beautiful. And so we got more engagement. And then Canva noticed that I was using Canva. So Canva tweeted me out one day and said, we see that you're using it. Would you ever like to talk about anything? I'm like, what the hell? So I sent an email to Peg Fitzpatrick and said, Canva, isn't that the company you said is like doing really great stuff? She goes, yeah, you should do whatever they want because they're so cool. So I meet with them and I don't know, fast forward a few weeks and I'm working for them. So I am chief evangelist of Canva, totally outward focused. The company's in Sydney. And my job is to carry the Canva flag. So what does the Canva flag mean? It is an online graphics design service. It's meant to be sort of a fast, free, and easy replacement for Photoshop for people who can't afford or master Photoshop. And it is essentially the democratization of design. So Canva democratized design, Google democratized information. I would say that Apple democratized computing. Etsy democratized crafts. I'm into democratization. I love democratization. So I was chief evangelist of Apple. I'm chief evangelist of Canva. It's the second time I've ever used chief evangelist as my title. It's because I love design. I can't do design, but I love design, and I want to help people learn design.
How do you define success for yourself? What does success mean to you?
For me, success would mean that I have 4 children. I would love, okay, so you know how some people, they need a position and they need a podium to be happy, and that's not me. Believe it or not, you find this impossible to believe. I'm fundamentally an introvert. I really don't need the attention. I don't thrive on the attention. It's neither here nor there for me. So success for me would be I can just take my kids to school in the morning, play hockey, pick them up, watch House of Cards at night. I mean, I don't need the attention. And so, if I ever hit it big, like big, you're going to see me disappear. I will disappear. You will not. Everybody will wonder what happened to me. I would just love to be with my kids and play hockey.
What is your biggest goal or dream that you haven't achieved yet?
God, I wish I could have, I would love to be able to skate backwards.
We can arrange that.
Yeah,
we can start Brian can make that happen for you.
More likely I'll be a billionaire than I'll skate backwards. That's a hard question because it's not like I've done so. It's not like I've accumulated and done so much. I don't think that way. It's interesting. So when I was younger, I thought someday I will speak at the World Economic Forum in Davos, right? So then I spoke, just like, okay, so one day you're at the urinal at Davos, and you turn to your right, and it's like the president of Lithuania, right? He pays the same way I do. Like, whoa, that's okay. So I did the Davos thing. I've never been invited to TED. I've been multiple TEDx's. So I guess you could say I fantasize about speaking at TED. But then I look at the people who speak at TED. I mean, they're freaking curing cancer. They're
Right.
like, stopping poverty in Africa. What have I done? I made 50 tweets today. So I can understand in a rare moment of humility why I'm not invited to TED, and, Eunice and, Sting are. Okay, I can deal with that. So I'm trying to go down the list, and I just like so happy. I think at some point in your life, I want my kids to be happy. I want them to be productive people. That's one way you measure success in life. I don't know.
Those are great.
I
Those
got
are
a New York
great
Times
things.
bestseller.
Yeah,
I did that once. Okay.
Yeah, those are great things.
It's funny. So, I get this New York Times bestseller once or twice or something like that. And you know what? The next day, my daughter could care less. She doesn't even know. She doesn't care. She's just like, Dad, can we go to Bed Bath & Beyond? That's what she cares about.
Tell us what your typical day is. I don't know, like, people are interested in this. What do you do besides the same thing that all of us do? So what are you doing?
So my typical day is I get up at about 7, and I take one of my kids to school, and then I go to either Stacks of Menlo Park or Stacks of
Every
Redwood
day?
City, just about. And I go to one of these
It's a
restaurants.
breakfast place. It's
for
those that don't know.
And I answer email, and I do social media for a couple hours. And then typically there's some kind of Skype conference or webinar or HOA or something. So I do that. And then I play hockey. And then I go back to Stacks or Cafe Baroni in Menlo Park, and I answer email and do social media. And then there's another webinar or something like that. And then I pick up one of my kids, and then I go home and I answer email and do social media. So now,
sounds really glamorous.
It's not really glamorous. Now, when I travel,
kidding.
I travel 30 or 40% of the time. So the nature of my travel is I fly into a city, I get in there at night, I sleep, I wake up, I speak, I come back. I'm very seldom in a city more than a day. So I've been all over the world.
For one day.
For one day. I know. I have been to Russia for 8 hours because I always want to get home. In a perfect world, one of my goals in life is that I am no longer a United Airlines global service level customer, because they say, "Guy, you didn't travel enough. You just, get used to paying for your upgrades, guy, because you suck now." That would be a goal in my life.
That's a great goal.
Yeah.
The best advice you ever received?
Best advice I ever received is, assuming that you're not, an absolute sociopath, that you should never expect people or ask people to do something that you would not do. And that is great advice for your followers on social media. It's good advice for dealing with customers, with vendors, with employees, with partners, with kids. Never ask people to do something you would not do.
Do you ever stop smiling?
Never. I'm a happy guy.
This from our wise guys in London, but do you have anything to do with Kawasaki bikes?
I wish. No, I'm the poor side of that family. So what happened was, several generations ago, my ancestors, it was an all-girls family. And so when they got married, the Kawasaki man, it wasn't a Kawasaki at that time. The man took the name of the girl's family to preserve the run of her name.
Oh, wow.
So that's why. So yeah, no, I don't even like motorcycles. Motorcycles scare the crap out of me. When I die, I want to look good. Better.
Where can I get the Art of the Start 2.0 today? Where is it available?
You can get it at Kepler's here and Amazon and Google Play and iTunes, iBookstore. If you want information about it, GuyKawasaki.com has all my blog posts, all my everything, information about the book, all that kind of stuff. So that's a central place. If you want to see what I'm doing, it's Twitter and Google Plus and Facebook and Pinterest. And
like I said at the beginning, I've spent the last month, digging through the book, and I can't recommend it enough as a way for entrepreneurs. You're still going to make so many mistakes, but you might make like 100 less mistakes if you read this first. So, and learn from a few of the lessons in it.
Well,
So,
$100 less mistakes, and let's say that's a $20 book.
it's pretty
It's
good
a great
ROI.
deal, right?
Yeah, it's good ROI.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, last question for you, and that is Steve Jobs or Tim Cook?
What? Steve Jobs. I mean, what
Steve
else?
Jobs.
Let's
okay.
do a whole lightning round. I mean, okay, so it's 10:56. What, is Google shutting down? Why are we so constrained?
Well, we can keep going.
Okay,
let's
so
keep going.
Okay, you got more questions?
I got lots of questions. Yeah, we can keep going.
Because I got to leave here at 11:20 to get to where I need to go for hockey.
Well,
So
great. Let's
you
keep
guys
going.
all right? I mean, I
don't know. You're
paying
somebody.
overtime here. I
Michael's
don't want Larry and Sergey not
We're here for the whole day, so we
Really?
can just keep going. We bring food in, and
No, I got to play hockey.
You know.
I like you, but not as much as hockey.
What's let's talk about mentorship. Tell us about do you have a mentor today? Did you have mentors?
When you're 60, you don't have mentors anymore.
Yeah, I've heard 6-year-olds say that before, actually.
I had 2 mentors. One mentor was in a company called Nova Stylings. My first real job out of school. It was a jewelry manufacturer located in downtown Los Angeles, owned by a family. One of the best formative experiences I've ever had, because it taught me how to sell. This is a company that manufactured fine jewelry that sold to companies like Tiffany and Cartier. They sold to fine jewelers. So I wasn't on a floor selling rings to Tiffany and Biff getting engaged. I was selling to the store that sold to Tiffany and Biff. And it's a tough business, because at some level, gold and diamonds are valuable, but they are commodities. 18 karat gold is 18 karat gold. Diamonds got clarity, that
it's
kind of
defined.
Stuff. Yeah, at some point it's defined, right? So it was such a hard sell, because the buyer always wants to stick your stuff on a scale and say, well, there's like 0.25 ounce of gold. Gold closed today at 700. So that's X for raw material. I give you 10% for labor and design, right? That's the nature of that business. So you really have to learn to sell. So that was one. A great mentor. Brought me into that small company. And I left as a VP of sales and marketing. Fantastic experience. At Apple, I had a mentor named Al Eisenstadt. He was general counsel of Apple, and he helped me navigate the treachery of Apple. So he was very formative. The flip side of your question is, do I ever mentor people? And the answer to that is no. It's because of a lack of bandwidth. And it's also, I don't have the right mentality. I'm not the kind of touchy-feely, vegetarian, Prius driving Birkenstocks kind of guy that wants to hear your family story and, hear your goals and help you actualize your fantasies. I like, just freaking man up and ship, I don't want your bullshit. And so that's just not good for mentors, to have that attitude. So.
Well, sometimes it is, but maybe not every time.
Well, that's going to be my answer almost every time. So.
I think, a lot of people say, oh, if I just got Guy, or if I just got Steve Blank to be my mentor, like my whole world, my problems would be solved. When do you stop?
Man,
when do you stop listening?
Yourself.
Exactly. So when do you stop listening to a mentor's advice and say, hey, you know what? Like, this is like, where is that line of like, hey, I need great advice, but I need to just ship?
I think at some level, mentoring. I think the most useful kind of mentoring is very specific questions, right? So not how am I a better leader? It's much more tactical, like, how do I fire somebody? Or to give you, how do I get more people to follow me on social media? I can answer that question, right? How do I optimize my posts? And I could tell you, well, on Twitter, you have an aspect ratio of 2:1, and you need to put in a link, and you should have about 130 characters because you want people to be able to retweet and put their name on it. So, but that's not what people really mean by mentorship, right?
Sure.
So that I just live at a very tactical level. I'm the kind of guy that's on the ground, painted face, knife in my teeth. That's me. I'm not the B-1 bomber guy, 50,000 feet. You don't even see me. Just all of a sudden you're dead. I'm also not the guy in the Pentagon in the Situation Room, just like saying,
Making
okay,
decisions.
yeah, right. I'm the guy on the ground, and that's how this book is written. That's how I live my life.
How can an entrepreneur build, mental toughness and resilience? What did you do? What have you seen people do to basically get through all the crap that we have to deal with?
Well, first you have to understand that you're going to deal with a lot of crap, and if you don't want to deal with a lot of crap, then go work for a big company where you'll deal with a different kind of crap, but still crap, but different kind of crap. I don't think there is a way to prepare. You just have to understand you're getting into it. And if it were easy, more people would do it. Everybody would love to be Steve Jobs or Larry or Sergey. I mean, it's just not that easy. And you just have to gut it out. I mean, I wish it was, if I could write a book about that, well, first of all, I would price it at $1 million per copy, but it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And anybody who tells you that it's that easy, you should run from them.
Yeah. In some ways, it feels like you just have to, you literally have to experience it. Like, in order for you to appreciate, truly appreciate freedom, in some ways, you have to experience what the opposite of freedom is. I mean, not,
Yeah.
but like, you, at least in my mind, like, as I've gone through what I would call the valley of the shadow of death, and looked death in the eyes and survived and lived to tell, then like that experience, like I couldn't read a book, I couldn't do it. It was a visceral thing, and as I read
and you're
about,
better for it.
Oh, 100 times better for it. Yeah.
I'm not saying you should go and look for a death experience.
No.
Right.
Oh, it finds you.
Yeah, right.
Pretty
It's
quickly.
going to find you. Enough are going to find you anyway. You don't have to go
That's
look
right.
for it.
That's right.
But really, and since this book, at least it'll help you avoid many death experiences, right? Some things, in a sense, if you were to use a car analogy, this book will at least help you have airbags and seatbelts. You
Right.
could still die after you read this book, but at least if you have a seatbelt and airbag, you might avoid.
You might only break your arms.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
What do you do when a big company like Google or IBM come in and announce the same product that you're working on? When these kinds of external factors come in, what should be an entrepreneur's reaction to that?
Well, usually they panic. Usually they cry foul. Usually they want to call up their mothers and ask for psychiatric help. I mean, that's just the way it is. But I've noticed that, it's not necessarily the death. And, Google and Apple and all these companies, first of all, most entrepreneurs, they shouldn't take it personally, right? I mean, it's not like Google sat down and said, we're going to stick it to you. Google probably doesn't even know who the hell you are, right? So don't flatter yourself to think that Larry and Sergey are plotting your demise, because they don't know who you are. So, well, part of it is, how smart are you? I mean, did you do something that's so obvious that they could do, they would do, they should do?
Yeah.
That's part of it. And then the flip side is, well, let's say that you did everything right and they just decided to do the same thing you're going to do. Well, then maybe Yahoo will buy you instead, right? Or maybe Facebook will buy you instead. Or maybe now you'll see that the large company that entered this market is going to blow it. Or they could legitimize it. It could be a rising tide floats all boats. I think fundamentally, for an entrepreneur, you have to always see the glass as half full.
Yeah.
Worst case. Now, some of it you may have to be delusional, but let's say that a company enters the same space, and first of all, you should never look like you're sweating, and you should say, well, this legitimizes our vision. Like even Google believes they should do this, right? And then you just pray to hell that you can, move faster than
Withstand the
Google, or
storm.
Google will lose interest, because
Yeah.
that could happen. And a case in point in my history. So Apple used to have application software, Mac Write, Mac Paint, whatever, right? So let's say that you're Adobe and you have Lightroom, and then Apple announces Aperture. Like, holy cow! Apple, the company that's selling the Macintosh, is now selling Aperture. What are we gonna do? Well, first of all, you make Lightroom as good as possible, number one. And number two, you sort of you gut it out. And then one day, Apple, with its ADHD, says, guess what, guys? We're going to kill Aperture, because I don't know what. Tim Cook got up on the wrong side. Johnny Ive doesn't like Aperture, so we're killing Aperture, right? And so, gee, imagine if you were Adobe and Apple announced Aperture, so you said, all right, we're discontinuing Lightroom, game over, we're going home. That would be a tragic mistake. So some of it is you just gut it out.
I think I love Dropbox's original YC application, where in it, one of the questions there is, who are your competitors? And there were all these rumors that Google was coming out with this, this kind of cloud
Google
storage,
Drive,
Google Drive. Everyone was talking about it. And at that point, he could have said, hey, this is too scary.
Yeah.
But no, and it turns out like there's a great place in the world for Dropbox that they've carved out, and Google Drive also is a great product and works just fine.
Well, that's the rising tide theory, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a big market's a big market. So as a side piece of advice for you, the CEOs of startups, one of the most important things for a CEO of a startup is you can never have a bad day, right? Even in your most terrified, depressing moments. You have to put on a positive face, because employees are watching you. So I saw Steve Jobs get pissed off. I saw him get in rages. But I never, ever saw him get depressed. He probably was depressed, don't get me wrong, but I never saw him.
But the door was closed.
I never saw him say, "Guy, are we doing the right thing? Should we do an MS-DOS machine?" I never saw that moment, right? If I had seen that, I'd say, holy shit, Steve Jobs is scared. Man, I really should be scared, right? So as a CEO, you cannot ever look scared.
Well, let's talk about Steve Jobs. It's interesting. We once interviewed Nolan Bushnell, who was his boss at Atari. Interviewed Trip Hawkins, who worked for him and founded EA. And you get these different perspectives. What is in there's a new movie out on Steve Jobs, just that premiered at South by Southwest as well. So people were people were talking about it again. What were your impressions of him? What were some of the things you've learned from him?
He was utterly fantastic. You would not be interviewing me here today if it wasn't for Steve Jobs, because I would be maybe selling gold and diamond jewelry today. I don't know. So I kind of owe everything to him and another guy named Mike Boych, who brought me into Apple, which gave me the entree to Steve Jobs. But Steve Jobs just set such high expectations for people. He didn't suffer fools. He completely impatient, extremely high standards. He had, sort of, when I worked for him, this is, decades ago, he didn't really.
This is first version 1.0 of Steve,
but,
right?
1.0 of Steve is better than, version 5 of most people, right? And so he would not hesitate to embarrass you or anything like that. And all these theories of touchy-feely HR, you meet with people, you self-actualize goals, you develop these paths and all this kind of stuff. Steve Jobs is the antithesis of that. So, what drove me to the results I had at Apple? I would say 80% of my motivation was I was afraid of Steve Jobs saying that I was a bozo in public. It scared the shit out of me to think that at some communications, Steve would pick me out, because I seen him do this. Say, "Guy,"
like in a big meeting or something.
In a big meeting of employees or in public, doesn't matter. It's like Steve would say, "Guy, why are you even here? Like, who hired Guy? What bozo hired Guy?" I lived in fear of that.
Was this happening a lot, or was this
enough to
be afraid that it was a possibility?
And so, contrary to every HR theory, man, I was like, wow, I don't ever want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So, So
What happened when he did that? Would the person stand up and walk out, or would they wait till the
well,
end
some
of the
people
meeting?
just got fired like that. I
Like
mean,
that was it.
Yeah.
Get out.
You know, there wasn't exactly, well, we're going to put a letter in your file. We're going to work on a path to get you out. If you're off that path, you're out. It's like, aloha, oi. I mean, you know, when you have a really great dictator, it's a very efficient company. Okay.
Yeah.
So I cherished the days I worked for him. It was freaking fantastic. Scary,
Yeah.
but fantastic. And you know, there's no doubt in my mind that right now he's telling God what to do. No doubt, none whatsoever. So it was just, I'll tell you my favorite Steve Jobs story. So one day I'm in my cubicle and I'm working, and Steve Jobs shows up with this guy that I never met in my life. And he says, "Guy, what do you think of this company called Nowhere?" And it was a company of knowledge software, hence the truncation Nowhere. I said, "Well, Steve, it's kind of a mediocre company, mediocre products, MS-DOS, doesn't take advantage of color, mouse, graphics, drill and practice, piece of crap, 4 + 4 = 8 kind of software. Nothing for us because it's not a Mac kind of a product."
Huh.
And he turns to the guy, and then he turns to me and says, "Guy, I want you to meet the CEO of Nowhere." Oh my God, total setup, right? But with hindsight, I freaking passed the Steve Jobs IQ test.
Yeah.
Because Steve probably knew the piece of crap software, right? So if I said to Steve, "Oh, brilliant, innovative piece of software," next communications meeting is a guy, "Why are you freaking even here at this company? Who hired Guy? Raise your hand. Who hired Guy?" I passed the test.
Wow.
That was it.
That's awesome.
I lasted a long time after that.
Was it like that where it was like you had to have that moment with him, and then he kind of, or was it was every day potentially that moment where his opinion of you would change?
There are people like Andy Hertzfeld who, you know, were just like off the scale in competence and all that. So he
was fine.
But people like me, like, wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic experience. Everybody should have an experience like that once in their life. Once is enough.
Once is enough, probably. When this is an actual question we got, and it's a good question, and that is, when is it time to quit? When do you know that your dreams are turning into nightmares?
Well, A, you don't. It's only with hindsight. That's one answer. B, you could ask your spouse. Well, actually, that sounds too politically correct. You should ask a woman, because I think women are much better judges of whether an idea is good, whether you should continue the idea or not. And I have some science behind this. My theory is that men, deep in our DNA, we have this killer gene. So men always like to kill stuff. That's why there's so many wars, right? And so men want to kill other people. They want to kill plants. They want to kill animals. And in business, men want to create products and services to kill other companies. So if you ask a man, should I do this? Should I try to kill Google, kill YouTube, kill Cisco, kill Apple, kill Canva, kill Adobe? Most men will say yes, because it's the killer gene expressing itself. It cannot be completely controlled. Women don't have this fundamental flaw in their DNA, so they don't into killing stuff. So my advice is to ask women, you know. Now,
but not your mom, right? Because she loves everything that you do, or I don't know, mom.
It depends on your mom. But
yeah. Okay.
Certainly not your dad.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice. But you know what? I'll tell you something. We can probably close here because I am going to play hockey. One of the important things to understand is that, you know, there's a danger in books like this and people like me that we are giving you illustrations, right? So we give you an illustration that Steve Jobs did it this way, or Google did it this way. So we're giving you these anecdotes, we're giving you these metaphors, these similes, these analogies, and you're saying, yeah, so the lesson of Apple was when they went from a closed architecture iPhone to an open architecture iPhone, apps exploded and the phone became successful. So that's the lesson, right? So that's what people like me do in our books. But, you know, that is a data point. it's not necessarily science. There was no test. There was like, okay, let's take 2 equal phone platforms. We'll have one closed, one open, wait 5 years and see which one is more successful, because that's not how business works. So the danger in a book like this, or danger in this kind of interview and advice, is you're going to hear these stories and you're going to try to apply them.
Yeah.
That's the danger. On the flip side, the beauty of science is controlled experiment, you know, all this kind of stuff. So it's valid and it's statistical and all that. The problem with that is that it takes so long to do this. So the danger of science is it takes too long. The danger of metaphor is that it's not scientific. That's what makes it challenging. So, you know, but at the end of the day, when all the dust is settled, guess what? I mean, the only way you're really going to know is to try. And that is the beauty of today, because now the barriers are so much lower to trying.
Yeah.
Because everything is fast, free, or cheap. It's much more of a meritocracy. You don't need to suck up to Sand Hill. You can go to Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and there's no investment committee made up of old, tall, white males looking at Indiegogo and Kickstarter to approve a project, right?
Right.
So I think it's a better situation.
Well, every question, if you're still with us, hopefully, every question that we talked about basically has a full page going into much greater depth about it. So I hope that everybody will go pick up The Art of the Start 2.0, GuyKawasaki.com. You can get it at startupgrind.com. It's right there's a link, picture of Guy, and you can click over to it. But please pick it up. Let me just thank Google for Entrepreneurs for hosting us, Marianne for helping set this up, and the team, and of course Guy for joining us at Startup Grind. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now get back to work.
Ship.
Thank you. Ship.
Okay.